Hi class, so we'll be doing our critiques. I'll probably be doing groups of 4 or 5 depending on how many students I'll get through. I'm going to start with Roberto's work. So this looks like his denotative and his connotative is on the bottom. So I think Roberto taking good direction by taking the title treatment and putting this more on the top. I would just be careful with how close this type is still getting to the edges. I think you can go smaller with your type. But also want you to take a look at some of the work that's being done in your class. Look at other student work and just take a look at how small the type can be. You can definitely get away with making the type a lot smaller if you want to bring more space around your layout, because I think your type is still getting too close to the edges, and it doesn't. We definitely want to avoid that. We want to bring in some open space here, kind of like what you have established here. So let's work on that a little bit. Not everything needs to be centered. I'm noticing that this is a centered alignment. Everything seems to be centered. Let's kind of break this up and maybe see if we can bring some left alignment somehow into this overall layout. And then I would say that there's some kind of stretching going on with your font right here. So if you zoom in, you see like this font looks a little bit extended upwards. It's been stretched. Same thing over here and here. I believe this is the font that you're working with, as well as the font here, but um, it's been alterated, and we want to keep the font as it is. We don't want to be doing those types of effects to our font. Alright, so we want to just keep the font intact. We don't want to be stretching it vertically or horizontally. I would also say the same goes for these areas as well. Let's not stretch the type. Let's keep the type as it is. And then let's take a look at your connotative. I think your connotative is looking a little bit better. I like this area right here. It seems to be having a little bit more of a pronounced shape. I'm still not so sure what these guys are doing right here. It looks like this half of the poster does not belong with this half right here, so we need to kind of find a way to unify the top and the bottom half. And maybe parts of these little paragraphs right here can come a little closer. Maybe, again, not so much rotation happening. So what I would recommend is just to kind of tone it down, because like I said in previous critiques, not everything has to have an effect. You can have some areas that have an effect, but others can be a little bit more subdued and can have functional typography. Alright, so let's take a look at this for your next round and just kind of hone in and avoid getting the type this close. This is way too close for comfort. Same here, same here. And I would also say right here, overall, this whole layout can go much smaller. And we could still read the type. So let's take a look at that a little bit more closely for the next round. Let's go to Terrence's work. Terrence, this is looking really good. I like where we're going with this, and the overall sense of scale that you've been establishing with your layout looks pretty good. One thing I wanted to say though is I'm not so sure. You say here 4 pieces of sliced bread, 3 tablespoons of butter, and then grilled cheese. So it looks like your ingredients are right here, and then the setup, which means the instructions, are kind of going from here and all the way to the second column. If there's a way to kind of treat the ingredients a little bit differently, somehow they kind of seem like they're in the same tone as the instructions, and I want to make sure that we still read those a little bit differently. And maybe there's a way to say step 1, step 2, step 3 somehow, just so we kind of know that this is a recipe that you're building. So just a few little details here and there, but I think you're on the right track. I think this one is definitely gotten a big improvement from the previous round. I like where it's going and the playfulness of the letters put together. So I think here with your connotative, the stuff and setup, it looks like stuff we know are the ingredients right here, the setup, and then the build. So I'm just kind of missing that with your denotative because I'm not sure where things are coordinating with what word. So we just need to give that a little bit more sense of direction and also intention. So here it seems like you have a bit more intention with some of the words that you're using and the paragraph structure. So I definitely like where this is going. And I would just say there's some areas here that might be getting a little too close to the edge. So I like that we're also cropping things intentionally, like the G and the C, so that makes for a good crop. Just be careful when you get a little too close like that. And same right here with your little areas over there. So just something to consider. But I think overall you're doing a good job. I think you just need a few minor tweaks and you can call this done. Let's move on to Fernando's work. Fernando, I noticed that there have been some changes between the one that you presented last week and this week. So I think this is the one from last week, or I believe this week, and last week. And I wanted to do a comparison because I think there were some things that we did that were a little bit more interesting in your previous round than in your second round, so I'm going to do a bit of a comparison. What I liked about your first round was that there was an overall sense of contrast being used between this area of the ingredients right here and then the michelada. I felt like that was somehow taken away with your second round. I feel like these areas right now are not really making much sense somehow, and I feel like you somehow lost that sense of contrast that we had in the previous one. So I'd like to bring some of this back a little bit. Although I like where you're going with the directions here. It seems like it's a little bit more organized. So I'd like to bring some of this back into this layout right here. Okay, and I don't think you need that much space in between this area and that area. So we can go back to this and bring in some of the directions and ingredients treatment that you have here. Maybe not so much space in between. I'd say lessen the amount of leading in between the sentences, and I think you should be good. And same goes for the ingredients list. So let's try to work on that. Let's go to your connotative. So again, I'm going to compare that with your last week's layout. So this is last week's layout, and then this is this week's layout. I don't think there has been much changing happening going on, so I still think that in comparing the two and just seeing, I like the sense of white space here that you had established. I think what was bugging me was that those were getting a little too close to the ingredients list, and what was nice about this is we had a little bit more white space around the letter forms, and I feel like with this layout here we're missing that, and it seems like your previous layout was a little bit stronger. I'm not so sure why we're putting things on an angle like that. It doesn't really seem to make sense with the rest of your layout. Sorry, that's someone else. So I would rethink your previous layout and just think about maybe most famous Mexican Greek michelada. Maybe that can go somewhere here, right? Or if you want to stack this right below and right on top of ingredients, but just align it to the ingredients list or align to the directions right here, flush left or flush left over here. They would make more sense, and I would say this would be a little bit stronger. So I hope that helps. And then let's go to Jaqueline's work. So Jaqueline is doing the strawberry shortcake. I think this looks a lot better. We're definitely starting to see some good formatting going on, and overall just using more consistency with the types of fonts and sizes overall. So I think we can definitely see a bit more organization of sorts. I still would like to see a little bit more white space. I still think those are becoming more like a border, if anything. And if there's a way to somehow bring down the scale a little bit more and create a little bit more openness like what we have here, this would kind of breathe a little bit easier. Alright, so that's still my feedback for your title treatment, is to kind of scale it down a little bit. Let's go to your connotative, and I think this is definitely looking a lot better in that we are starting to see more of a cleaner shape. I think you're getting a little too close to the edge right here. If we can find a way to move these paragraphs a little bit more in and the ingredients list more in, so we can create a bit more space around your layout. Right? And I think strawberry shortcake does read much better this time around. And then making the plate a little bit more believable as a plate does work out. So that would be my feedback for you. And then let's go to Alexa's work. Alexa, this looks a lot better and cleaner from the previous round. I would say though, a lot of your type right now is just very large, and I think you can get away with making things much smaller. And you have a certain amount of white space that you can use, and you don't need to use this much white space between the title treatment and your ingredients and instructions. I still think we need to somehow unite these two together, because right now they feel like two separate entities, the title and then the ingredients and instructions on their own. So let's scale those down a little bit and try to find a way to unify them with the title. All right, and I don't think you need that much kerning for these areas right here with the titles, subtitles of ingredients and instructions. So that would be my feedback for you, is just take a look at overall white space around the page. All right. So for your your connotative, again, close to the edge right here, so be careful of that. I would like it if you were to crop instead of just put the baseline of this word on the edge like that. So I'd rather we do some kind of a crop that makes more visual sense. Right now it just seems to sit on the baseline of the page, which is what we don't want. It's looking better. I think we can still use some white space. If this is going to be your dominant title right here, these can go a little smaller and just create a little bit more negativity here, negativity space right there, and then see if there's a way to unify those types of paragraphs that you have here to certain letter forms. So align certain things to the grid. Okay, I hope that helps. But it's definitely improving with every week that you create a new version. So that was group 1, and I will see you guys in the next video for group 2.